welcome back to my channel. My name is Paige and this is my open book. In today's video, we are doing the mid-year freakout book tag. Am I freaking out because it's already the middle of the year? Yes. I honestly can't believe it's already July. Like, I'm sorry, how? I mean, I know I'm not the only one. You guys are probably tired of hearing everybody say that, but I know you agree. So this year has been super fast, and I've actually already read like 90 books this year, I think, which is crazy. I only made my reading goal at 100 books, so I'm pretty happy with that. Also, sorry if you can hear fans going or if I keep like pulling the hair away from myself. Our AC is out and it's like 90 degrees outside, so that's where we're at. I'm trying to distract myself by filming. So anyway, so I've got my iced coffee here. So grab a drink, grab a snack, and let's chat about some books. So this tag is all about the books that I've read just in this year so far. So in the first half of 2023, first question, which is the hardest one. Like, they were not kidding with this tag. They're just going in heavy with the first question. Best book you've read so far in 2023. Are we really surprised? I can't pick just one. I can't. So, but I narrowed it down to two, and I think that's pretty good. But the only reason why I narrowed it down to two is because there are other books that I feel like are up there as a contender for the best book of the year, but I saved them for other questions because I didn't want to repeat myself too much. So at least I was able to narrow it down to two, okay? We'll take it. So first up is Anything Ray Touches by Holly Cast. This is such an emotional romance. I think I've talked about it on my channel before. This is very underrated. I never see people talk about this book, and it is definitely, like, before I was even done with it, I knew that it was going to be on my best of list for the year already. I think about this book all the time. Like, this book just like lives rent-free in my brain. So just to give you a bit of a synopsis, this is a reverse Grumpy Sunshine. So in this story, the male main character is the more sunshiny, positive one, and the female character is the more like negative, grumpy one. And they actually have history together. So they went to the same high school. I know this might be a spoiler, but I think it's very important to put this trigger warning out there. This does involve a school shooting, so just keep that in mind going into it. That is usually a trigger for me, but I will say the way the author did it was very well done. So even if that's something that you usually try not to read in books, if it's not a super hard trigger for you, I think you'll be fine, but don't take my word for it. Obviously, you know, do whatever is best for your mental health. But anyway, they're in high school together, and you know that something happened to them in high school, but you don't really know what exactly went down. It starts off with Ray, the main female character. She just got out of rehab. She's trying to kind of like start over, start a new life for herself on her own now that she is out of rehab. She moves to this small town that's like off the coast, and she ends up running into Miles. And Miles is someone from her past, and they did not expect to see each other in this town because, like I said, she moved, she's trying to start over, she's trying to put the past behind her, and then he ends up living in the same town as her. So that totally throws her for a loop. He has kind of already gone through all the stuff that Ray has gone through, so he is definitely the more positive one in terms of dealing with the grief and, you know, other things that have happened in his life. But I love this book so much because the way they bond over the things that they went through and the way that they support each other in their healing, it was just so real. And I love how this wasn't just like a surface level, superficial romance. Like, it was deep. It was deep. It's also very spicy. We love a golden retriever male main character who is a dirty talker. I mean, come on. So I love this book. Like I said, I think about this book all the time, and I have a feeling this is going to be a book that I reread multiple times because I love rereading my favorite books, and I could not do any kind of best of anything for 2023 and not talk about this book. That would just be a crime, truly. The next one I want to talk about is another super underrated one. This is a very small author. I think it might be the first book this author has put out, but don't quote me. Again, don't always see anyone talking about it. I happened upon this on Instagram and I'm so glad that I read it. This is Grease Monkey, and this is a mechanic romance, and normally you would think that that's super cliche and probably really cheesy and predictable, but it wasn't. This was one of the most angsty romances I've read, not even just this year, like just period. So they meet when they are in, I think when they're in high school, I want to say, but it doesn't stop there. I'm sure you can guess there's dual timeline, there's flashbacks to when they were in high school, and then when they're older, like years later, after they've already broken up. I think she's like married to somebody else or engaged to somebody else, I can't remember. You know from the very beginning that, well, maybe not the very beginning, because in the beginning he's kind of a player, but once they get together when they're in high school, you know, like these people are soulmates and they are meant to be together. Like you think like nothing will ever tear them apart, like they are inseparable, they're perfect for each other, and then something happens with their families that she ends up breaking his heart. And he is devastated, and they go their separate ways. He moves to another state to try and get over her. She has to go live this other life. It's very gut-wrenching the way that went down. So then it flash forwards to when they're adults and they come across each other's paths again. It's actually like the female having to grovel, which I think is very underrated. In most books it's always the man that messes up and he has to go beg for forgiveness, but this is not like that at all. It's just so full of feeling, and I like I said, I was not expecting anything with any kind of like emotional depth out of this story. I just thought it was gonna be like a smutty mechanic romance, you know? I think the series is even called like the Not Safe for Work series or something like that. So I was like, oh, okay, this is gonna be like, you know, steamy good time. No, this was so painful to read at times just because of like what the characters are going through. And I was obsessed. You're rooting for them the entire time. And I love how the author took the time to show you their entire past, them breaking up in the middle, and then the whole second half of the book is them now that they're like older, like years later, whatever. So it's almost like 2 books in one. So you get them being together the first time and breaking up, and then them getting together the second time. I just love it. Like I said, no one ever talks about this book. You have to read it. If you don't read anything else from this video, please read these 2 books. I'm begging you. These authors deserve way more love than what they're getting. So please take my word for it. All right, next question is the best sequel that you've read this year so far. And I'm gonna go with Rebel Air by Jane Diamond. This was especially great to read because the first book in this series I was not a fan of. Jane Diamond is the author of one of my favorite series of all time, which is the Dirty series. It's a rockstar romance, and she has a lot of spin-off series based off of that original one. So this is one of those. You do get some of the same characters from that series in this one, but it's all new love stories. And the first book I was not a fan of. I think I DNF'd it actually. Yeah, I think I did. But this one was right back to what I love about Jane Diamond, but with a twist. So this follows Talia. She is actually the assistant to Maggie, which is like the tour manager of the band in the Dirty series. And then you get Lex, who is one of the security people that Jude hires from the Dirty series. So you still get, you know, glimpses of the old characters that we all love from that original band, but this is totally different storyline. This is actually a mix of like a mafia story mixed with like a motorcycle club romance, and I was living for it. Like, you would think that those 2 things in the same book would be too much, but it wasn't. It was so good. I was eating it up. And you already know, they were childhood friends before all of this even happened, and now that they're adults, like all this drama is going on and they are reconnecting, which you guys know I love. So this was like the perfect recipe for me, and I loved it. Lex is definitely like the bad boy type. He is in a motorcycle club, so he's not totally innocent, but his father is a mafia king basically, and he is trying to distance himself from that side of his life and just be devoted to his brothers and his motorcycle club. And unfortunately, the main female character gets wrapped up into it, and he has to do something terrible in order to get his father off of his back and to appease him. She unfortunately gets roped into it, but it was just so good. Like the tension between them. He's also like really protective of her, which was it was so good. It was so good. This is why I love Jane Diamond. She just knows how to write the best romances ever. So this was definitely the best sequel that I read, hands down. Next up, a new release that you haven't been able to read yet. I'm gonna go with Reckless by Elsie Silver. If you are on Bookstagram or BookTube, I'm sure you've heard everybody talking about this series, and I do enjoy it. I'm not as like obsessed as some other people are, I will say. I think that I've read other small town romances that were a little bit better, that had more depth, but this is still really enjoyable. I still liked all of the books that I've read so far. Flawless, the first book, was definitely my favorite. Heartless was my second favorite, and then Powerless, the third book, was my third favorite. So they actually go in order based on that. But the new book that just came out, Reckless, is actually about the sister of the main character in the first book. So it's gonna be interesting because in the first book, you're following the female main character, her name is Summer, and her sister, Winter, is kind of made out to be like the villain character in that series. So it's interesting that the author decided to give her her own book. I think that that will be a very interesting take on, you know, villain gets the love story kind of thing. And you also get Theo. So he is actually also from the first book. He is a bull rider, just like the male main character in the first book. So I think that I will at least like that dynamic, because I think that's part of the reason why I liked the first book so much. But I don't know how I'm gonna like this one, but I still want to read it because obviously I've read every other book in the series. I want to be able to continue it, and I'm curious to see how the author does the surprise pregnancy trope, because that's not usually my favorite. So I don't know. I've heard mixed reviews. I have heard people say that they love Theo, but I don't know if I'm gonna love Winter's story very much, but we'll see. I'm gonna give it a go, so I'll keep you posted on that. Next up, most anticipated release of the year. So basically, books that are gonna come out in the second half of 2023 that I'm most excited for. I narrowed it down to two. I couldn't pick just one. The first one I'm super excited to read is, I think it's One Last Shot. I'll put the cover right here. Hopefully I'm getting the title correct. This is the next book in the Fight series by Nikki Castle, and this follows an MMA gym and all of the fighters in there. So the first three books were so good. I loved all of them. The second one was my favorite. Jax and Haley, they are goals. They're goals. And Nikki Castle knows how to write some spice, and her men are the dreamiest. And she's also really good at writing strong female characters, which is super important to me. So I'm excited for this one to come out. This follows Kane and Isabella. So Isabella's a ballet dancer, and then Kane is a new fighter in their gym, and he definitely seems like the bad boy type. He rides a motorcycle. He seems like he has a lot of like baggage from his past, a lot of like dark energy around him, whereas Isabella, you know, is like the cutesy ballet dancer. So I think that their dynamic's gonna be really fun, and I can't wait to read this one. I think it comes out in August, so we're almost there, almost there. And then the next one I'm really excited for is A Touch of Chaos by Scarlett St. Clair. I devoured her Hades and Persephone series last year, and I didn't know that there was another book coming out. So I read through them all so quickly because I thought A Touch of Malice, I think it is. Yeah, A Touch of Malice. I thought that was the last book. And it ends on a cliffhanger, and I was devastated. I was devastated. So I have been counting down the months for this book to come out, and it's finally coming out in November of this year. Thank God. I think it's honestly like a year later. So I'm probably gonna have to reread them. But the good thing is the author also wrote kind of like a duology, or I'm not really sure what the term is, but she wrote another series from Hades' point of view, and it's, I believe, the same timeline as the Hades and Persephone books. So I think I can just read those, and that should still lead me up to what's going on in the story at the right time. That way I can go right into A Touch of Chaos. I'm gonna do more research, but I think I can just do that. That way I don't have to reread the ones that I already read last year, but we'll see. Anyway, I can't wait. I have been, like I said, I'm waiting like a year to read this book, so I cannot wait. This is definitely my most anticipated release because I need to know what happens. I need to know. Next question, the biggest disappointment that you had this year. I got two for this one. I already talked to you about this one in my June wrap up in my last video. This is A.L. Jackson's Love Me Today. I normally love everything this woman writes, but this one was just not it for me. I didn't like it at all. I was not invested in the characters. I didn't like the storyline. I see other people love it though. So maybe if you're like super into small town romance right now, like still give it a try. You'll probably like it. I don't know. Maybe I just had too high of expectations. It just wasn't for me. I was really disappointed with this one. But it's okay. We still love her and she's still the GOAT. So it's okay. But there's another book that was really disappointing, and that is Running Wild by K.A. Tucker. So I loved Simple Wild, the first book in this series. Oh, I loved it. She also wrote like a Christmas novella about the same couple, and then I think there was like a second book too. I went through all of those. I was obsessed. It's actually set in Alaska, so it's not just your typical small town romance. Like this is like for real, like barely anybody in the town. There's no stores, like you're in the middle of nowhere trying to survive, you know, in Alaska. So that was a very interesting dynamic to read about. It was a grumpy sunshine. I ate it up. This is actually the romance for the ex of the male main character in the Simple Wild. So kind of like what I was saying about Reckless by Elsie Silver. I don't know why I thought that I would like it, because throughout the whole Simple Wild series you're like kind of taught to hate this character because she's the ex of the guy that the main girl is trying to get with. It just was it was a miss for me. I did not care what happened to this woman at all, and I didn't like the way that she carried, I don't know, I just don't like the way she carried herself. I didn't like her romance with the main guy in here. I didn't like the way that she treated him. I don't know, this was another flop for me. I haven't read anything else by K.A. Tucker yet, so if you have, let me know what books you like by her, because like I said, I was obsessed with Simple Wild, but this was a miss, so I don't really know where to go from here. So if you know anything else by K.A. Tucker, let me know. Next is the biggest surprise that you read this year. I'm honestly gonna go with Taylor Jenkins Reid, the author. Like all of her books have been a big surprise for me. I did not think I was going to like her books, but everyone kept raving about them. I'm like, well, these aren't exactly romance books. It doesn't really seem like my thing. I don't really know this is like it for me. But everyone was talking about Daisy Jones and the Six and the Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and Malibu Rising. And I was like, all right, fine. So I started with Daisy Jones and I read it in 24 hours, less than 24 hours. And my immediate thought was, why did I wait so long to read this? And after I read that book, I've been reading everything by Taylor Jenkins Reid that I can get my hands on, and I have not been disappointed. So I think just like this author as a whole has been like the biggest surprise for me this year, because I'm obsessed with everything that she's put out. So yeah, I couldn't narrow it down to just one book, so I'm just gonna say everything by this author. Kind of leading into the next question, your favorite new author. So Taylor Jenkins Reid, even though she was new to me, she's not a new author, so I didn't want to use her for this question. I wanted to use someone that was also just like new to everybody, not just new to me. So I'm gonna go with Liz Tomford. She wrote Mile High and The Right Move. This is her Windy City series, and this is her debut series, and she came out swinging. She said, I don't need to have a practice novel that sucks so that I can, you know, get it out of my system and then go on to a new one. No, she came right out of the gate with a winner. And I'm not the only one that thinks that. These books are so hyped and so popular. I see so many people talking about them. I haven't heard a negative review about these books yet from anybody. So I feel like that's saying something. There's sports romances too, which is super fun, and I like how she's doing a different sport in each one. So the first one is a hockey romance, the second one is a basketball romance, and the third one is coming out, I believe this year actually, that's gonna be a baseball romance. So I love how she is doing sports romance in a series, but they are showing you like different aspects of different sports. So I think that's really fun. It's just a really good time. The second book was my favorite, The Right Move. I liked that more than I did Mile High, but Mile High was still super good. And I just love the dynamic that she gives her characters, no matter what the tropes are or what the storyline is. You just feel such a strong connection between her two main characters. She is an expert at writing that. So I highly recommend checking out this series by Liz Tomford. I think she's gonna be super successful, so get on it. Next up is newest crush. I'm gonna have to go with Knox from Things We Never Got Over. This was also up there for best books I read this year so far. Listen, this man knows how to take care of a woman, okay? He starts to take care of her like immediately, even though he doesn't know what her intentions are. He's not really sure why she's in town, who she is, why she's here. He just immediately sees that she needs someone to take care of her, and he just jumps up and does it. And I love the way that he also takes care of the main female character's niece. He's just so dreamy, and I love how he's a tough guy, he's a fighter, but he's also a lover that you just wouldn't know yet. Those of you who know my husband in real life, like, this is not a surprise why I love this character so much. Yeah, he's just everything you could want in a book boyfriend, and I'm not mad at it. He's definitely my biggest crush of 2023 for sure. Sorry, Josh. Next up, newest favorite character. And I'm gonna go with all of the siblings in Malibu Rising. I'm obsessed with all of them. I just finished this book like a couple weeks ago, and it's still like fresh on my mind. I can't help it. The oldest, she is probably the one I relate to the most, just because she's the one that, like, you know, is very regimented, making sure everybody else is taken care of. She often forgets to do things for herself, and I, you know, chronic people pleaser over here, so I related to her a lot. And I just loved, like, seeing her character develop over time, from when she was a child, you know, being heartbroken over something and then having to step up to the plate to take care of her other siblings because she was the oldest and she was the only one who could do so. You know, super strong. She was able to make a name for herself, and even though her life kind of like took a turn and she wasn't really getting everything that she personally wanted out of it, she made sure that her family was taken care of. And then when she realized that she could start taking care of herself and doing things that she wanted instead of thinking about how it's going to affect other people, the way that she just like flips the switch, she's like, you know what, I am gonna do something for myself, and she totally runs with it and doesn't give a shit about what anybody else thinks, and I loved that. I loved it. I couldn't get enough. So she was amazing. The youngest sister, I just love how like feisty she was, and she did not fit into anybody else's box, and I love how she called everybody out on their shit, and she is goals for sure. And then the two men also, like the middle brothers, I just loved their story. I loved how they bonded with each other since they were so close in age, and even though they had drama between the two of them, the way that they were able to still, you know, show their love for each other by the end was just really cool to see. And yeah, I love how they're just like a dynamic duo together, you know, like that. I thought that was just so cute. So yeah, I love all four of them. They're all my favorite. Next up, a book that made you cry. This doesn't take much for me. I'm a very emotional person. Cancer season. But the two that definitely come to mind are Rewrite Our Story by Kat Singleton. This is the most recent one that I read that made me cry. I talked about this in my May wrap-up, I believe, so I won't go into too much detail because I don't want to be too repetitive. But this was so emotional, and not only for the romance aspect, but also just, you know, the main characters go through grief at different points in the book, so obviously that aspect was also very sad. Having to read through, you know, losing people in your family is never easy, but you know, the way that this author wrote it I thought was really well done, and I like how she made it part of the story without detracting from the romance aspect. And the romance was super emotional too, so it was just, it was a double whammy. I couldn't help but cry. Don't blame me, okay? And the other book that made me cry is Bring Me Back by Kristen Granada. This is a neighbor, like her neighbor is a cop kind of romance. So this is actually kind of similar to Anything Ray Touches, where the main female character, she just got out of a rehab of sorts. There are trigger warnings for suicide for this book, so just know that going into it. So she is trying to, you know, make a new life for herself, rise up after, you know, going through what she went through, and she moves into this house that got passed down to her from her family. and people think it's abandoned. They don't know that she just bought it. So when she shows up, the cop next door thinks that someone's breaking in, and that's kind of how their story starts. And I just love the way that he was there for her while she was going through, you know, learning how to love herself again, and, you know, supporting her through her healing. There's also a side character that something really tragic happens to them, so there's also that aspect that made me really emotional reading this. I think there was just so much vulnerability in this story, and I think that's why it really, you know, tugged on the heartstrings. And I highly recommend, if you got some tissues nearby, pick up this book. Next is a book that made you happy, and I gotta go with Our Scorching Summer. This was such a fun summer read. It just, like, I was laughing out loud so often throughout this book. The banter between the two main characters was hilarious, and they're going on vacation together, so it just gives you like really positive, happy vibes. The main male character has very much golden retriever energy. He's very happy all the time, very much like go with the flow kind of person. So this book just had really good vibes, and I highly recommend it if you need something to bring a little, you know, sunshine to your day. This is a great one. Next is the best book to film adaptation, and I don't think I've seen any this year. I am excited for the Hunger Games movie to come out in November, so hopefully that'll be a good one. But for The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, this one right here, so yeah, maybe that'll be a good one, but I haven't really seen any. The only thing I can think of is Daisy Jones and the Six. One of my favorite books of the year, honestly, but the TV show wasn't my favorite, I'm gonna be honest. I think that they changed too many things for me, and I know that they can't just, you know, copy paste. They gotta change some stuff, I understand, but I just felt petty the whole time I was watching that show. I was just like mad at the stuff that they changed. I just felt like they were not just changing like little details that didn't matter. I feel like they were changing like big things in the book. Like, part of the reasons why I love the book are the things that they changed. So I feel like that kind of like missed the mark for me. It was so cool to see like the band, you know, come to life, and I listen to the soundtrack like almost every day. So I'm glad that they did it, but there are some things they changed that I wish that they didn't. So not my favorite, but it's pretty sure it's the only book to film adaptation I've seen this year. So that's what I had to go with. Next is the most beautiful books that you've purchased or received this year, and I gotta go with this set by A.L. Jackson. So Josh actually got me the box set of her Bleeding Stars series. They're so pretty. So that's what they look like on the side, and then each individual cover is so pretty. So this is A.L. Jackson's Rockstar Romance, and these are the discrete covers, and she came out with like a box set of all of them. And Josh was, you know, the best husband ever and purchased it for me. So thank you, Josh. Oh my god, I'm obsessed with these covers. And yes, I did make sure that my tabs matched the book cover, because how could I not? But yeah, this is one of my favorite series of all time. You guys know A.L. Jackson is the best author ever in my eyes. So I'm very happy to have these on my shelves, and I'm excited to collect all of her books. I would just love to have like a whole shelf dedicated to A.L. Jackson. Like, that's the dream. That's the dream. I can't get enough. I can't get enough. All of these tabs are from me rereading this series this year when Josh got me this, but I've already read these before, like a couple years ago, but when he got me these, I had to reread them, because when I read them the first time, I just read them on my phone, on the Kindle app, and like actually holding the physical book is just, you can't compete with that. You can't. And last question, what are the books that you need to read by the end of the year? I got a doozy of a list here. I'm obviously going to finish the Shatter Me series because I have the box set now and I've only read the first book, but this fall or winter, I haven't decided yet, but I'm definitely going to be finishing this by the end of the year. 100%. I have to. I've already decided. The other thing that I have on this list is Magnolia Parks. I have the first book. I'm hoping I can find the other covers. I know in my last video, I think it was my book haul, I talked to you guys about, you know, how it's been so hard for me to find this book all of a sudden, and I was right. She's coming out with new covers, and I don't like the new covers. So I'm gonna try to hunt down these covers like on eBay or something, or maybe I can like buy them off of a UK website or something. I don't know. I'm gonna find a way. But I got the first book at least, so I'm excited to read this series this year. This is supposed to be like Gossip Girl vibes. So I'm excited because Gossip Girl is one of my favorite shows, so I have a feeling I'm gonna like it. The other books I have on my list are books by Abby Jimenez. That's an author that I have not read anything by yet, but I know people love her books. Part of Your World and Yours Truly are the two that I've purchased so far, and hopefully those go well. I know she has other ones too, but those are her two newest ones that everyone seems to love, and I haven't read anything by her yet, so those are definitely on my TBR for the rest of the year. And then I've also got The Boys of Toman, I don't know how you say it, but that series I really want to read because I've heard that it's super angsty, super messy, super emotional. I've heard so many people say that those are like their favorite books of all time, so I feel like I'm gonna like them. But that's definitely one that I want to read this year. And in making this list, when I was thinking back to the Hades and Persephone series that I read by Scarlett St. Clair, I realized that I haven't been able to read any mythology retellings. I think I've read like one that was kind of inspired by Greek mythology, but that's usually one of my favorite tropes. Like, I am obsessed with a book that takes Greek mythology and puts a twist on it. So I really want to read this series by Carly Spade. This is the Contemporary Mythos series, and I've heard really good things about it, and I like how she has a whole series and each book is about a different god. So like there's Hades, Zeus, Poseidon, which we never get books about Poseidon, so I'm happy just to read that book, honestly, because he's my favorite Greek god. Yeah, I'm excited to read the series because I haven't read anything Greek mythology retelling this year, I think, and I'm really missing it. So I think that will satisfy that book craving. Alright, that's gonna be it for today's video. I'm glad that we got to go over the books I've read this year so far, just because I feel like it's easier to look at like just 6 months at a time instead of a whole year. So hopefully it'll make it easier at the end of the year when I'm ready to say like my favorite books of all of 2023. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Comment down below what's your favorite book so far that you've read in 2023, and you don't have to narrow it down to just one. You can do 2 or more like I did, because honestly it's like asking like who's your favorite band or what's your favorite song. You can't narrow it down, you just can't. So yeah, let me know your favorite book so far down below, and make sure you give this video a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.